She has a Sebastopol-based private natural medical practice, in part utilizing apitherapy, bee venom, honey, propolis, and other bee products in her practice. She volunteers at Forget Me Not Harm, and she's a mentor, a teacher, and you're going to have to pronounce this for me, at the bottom of the Charuli Soup Order. A gardener, cat lover, animal rights activist, conscious dancer, and proud aunt. So I'm happy to introduce Dr. Cosmic. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Grateful to be here. It's funny, I pray before I do everything. I ask for guidance and ask for views. I'm not a big techie person, so I don't have a PowerPoint. But I want to preface it. Well, first I want to say that I'm struck by these tenets, the four-way test, and especially will it be beneficial and will it be fair to all concerned. And for me, that's sort of the premise of my life. Service is put in my heart and soul, and for me, all includes all, and not just human beings, but everything, from insects to plants to rocks to everything. Because we were made collectively, we brought here collectively, and I think that you can't do it without every little piece of it. So that being said, I just want to say that I'm not an expert in this. This is new to me. This is a passion that has come to me from my very sensitive heart and spending time with the bees. I knew about bee define years ago, but it never touched me, because we all deal with our lives, what we're doing, right? And I deal with people, very sick people, in all different aspects, and that's where my energy went to. And so when I moved here a few years ago from back east, this is relevant to the story of the bees, but I was taught apitherapy. I was taught the bee venom therapy, which is using the live honeybees to sting for different disorders like MS and Lyme, and different, autoimmune and very hardcore disorders. I was taught that when I was living back east, but my practice was very full, so I never really got into it because it was just one more thing to add. So I just learned about it, and I never really fully incorporated it. And I was doing injections of the bee venom instead of utilizing the bees. So when I moved here to California, I was married to a farmer. That's what brought me here. And that changed. So I'm no longer married to the farmer, but I think that I was supposed to just get to Northern California. I had dreamed about Sebastopol before I knew it was a town. And that might sound weird to some people, and I had a lot of dreams about here, and then I was brought here like 5 years later. I didn't even know it was a town for a year until someone had mentioned it. I was teaching at a university out here, natural medicine, spiritual healing, and I would come out here every month to teach, and I fell in love with it. And I fell in love with a man, which brought me here. Because my life was very big, and I never would have moved, so the divine knows how to move things, right? And so when I got here, I'd been here a little while, and my circumstances changed, and I hadn't been working, and then I went into a situation where I was all alone very quickly, and I had to start working. And so I had some bees, and they died, and I said a prayer, and I said, a little challenging prayer. I said, if you really want me to be doing these things or supporting myself, I wasn't licensed yet here, you need to send me some bees. And in about 10 days, I had 3 swarms come to my yard. I lived in the house at Bloomfield and Pleasant Hill Road, and if you don't know about bees, that's kind of unheard of to have that many bees. So I had 3 hives, and right now I have 1, and I combined 2 of those because they were small into 1. But so my evolution with bees is continuing to happen as the divine brings that to my heart, and I watch what happens in the outer world with that. So I'm not a bee expert. This is just, I joined actually just last year the bee club, and someone dropped out of the position, and I'm into service, and they needed somebody, and so as vice president, I get the speakers for the organization. So that being said, I'd just like you to know we have a website, you can get information, and this is a pamphlet I just don't want to forget that you can grab. I just put one on the table, but grab as many as you want if you'll utilize them. It's also on our website, but you know, how to help the bees yourself. Bee plants on here, which is nice, you know, to plant some of them. And then, you know, hopefully what I'm hoping you gather from this, because I have a lot of information and some of it I may read, and I hate the speakers that read, you know, because it's not as, you know, but I'm honestly still learning about some of these things. And the more that I learn, the reason that I teach and share is because I learn more. You know, so I'm just hoping that you take one thing and change one or two things. Maybe a couple of you will be inspired to change things on a political level, you know, a larger level. And if not, what we do, especially here in Sonoma, this is a very special place, and some of you who may have always lived here may know that on one level, but I think coming from somewhere else gives me a special insight into how we act locally. And we're very blessed here. We have more bees than anywhere in the country, even though it's not as much, but we have more consciousness about working local and global, and that we can make a difference here. And someday the rest of the country may be coming to us for food. Because what's happening in the rest of the country is actually devastating, especially if you go to the Midwest. It's horrifying. I did bring some notes because it's so, I could go off on one subject for hours. And so I want to list some of the problems for bees. But what I'm hoping is you take home with you a change you can make, even if I talk about the monoculture and you decide not to support certain companies anymore, or not to use pesticides or fungicides or something like that. I do want to say that the problem is not a one-faceted colony collapse disorder, and it is continuing to happen. It's still happening. It's impossible to be a beekeeper. It's not sustainable anymore because of many reasons. And the media has sort of exploited it. It's very erroneous that it's one thing, or that people are arguing and spending all that energy on arguing about which is the one problem. It's not. It's not one thing, it's many things. And they're an indicator species, so we need to pay attention because it's funny, I prayed last night about to use me to bring through whatever's most beneficial for people here and for the bees' sake. And when I speak of bee, I'm speaking of the honeybee. And this morning I woke up and the first thought I had was ladybugs. And I was thinking that, you know, ladybugs and grasshoppers and all those small insects that when I was a kid, you don't see them anymore. And I was thinking, I was in Windsor, I stopped at the hardware store, and we sell like ladybugs in boxes now. And it's so bizarre to me that we just live in a world like this. And you know, because we don't have them, so somebody has to make them somewhere to bring them into, you know, into our yards. And so I bought praying mantis, grasshoppers, and ladybugs to put into my yard, and hopefully. And so it's many faceted, and it does have to do with pesticides and fungicides and herbicides, but it also has to do with the monoculture challenge. I'm going to list some of them because I may not get to all of them. And the grazing land challenge, commercial beekeeping challenge, which is a big one, genetic diversity challenge, also pathogen pollution challenge, which includes the pesticides, and there's many things involved with that. So first of all, the monoculture challenge, this has to do with, and here it's a little different, but we still have it. You know, when I was younger, my grandparents, you know, most of us probably, especially here, but I grew up in Pennsylvania, and we had, my grandparents had, you know, a little bit of everything. They grew a little bit of everything. It had flowers and trees, and there was everything. And so we had all the different insects that played a part, you know, and everything was a part of an ecosystem. Just like in here, we're all different. We've all got different parts to play in society, and we really can't do without, you know, and if we don't take care of the little guy, if we don't have a home for the little guy, because rent's too expensive, then the big guy's not going to last long either. And that has to do with insects, you know. Insects have their part, and if we get into that this is a nuisance, or I don't like this, even if it's just the weeds so that this can look pretty, you know, it's a big problem that we all have something we can change. I still have things I can change. My landlord's here, and David's my landlord, and when I moved in, I decided that I was going to, since I had a new palette, I decided that I was going to plant in one area, just scatter wildflowers and for the bees and the different pollinators. Not just the bees. First I did it just for the honeybees, and I decided I need to bring everybody in because they all work together and they'll grow and they'll tell their friends and more will come. And so I put in a lot of a lot of the plants and fruit, and just scattered it in different places so that it wasn't, just one thing. But one of the facts, there's a couple facts in here I want you to look at, because you can sit with it, well, I could sit with it forever and just contemplate it. But it takes 2 million flowers and 55,000 miles of flying to make 1 pound of honey. So it can be, here's just one, just think of that. And I used to prescribe honey for everything. And real honey. You have to know that it's real honey. But you buy it Safeway, I'm sorry to say, it might not be real honey, because we import like 75% of the honey in this country is from China. And it might not be here. We're lucky because we have so many beekeepers here, so you can get it from your neighbor or Hector or whatever. I did not give any honey. I left the honey to my bees here because we're in a drought. And just because there's flowers doesn't mean there's nectar for them. Because if the flower doesn't have water, there's no nectar, because they don't have any food, which is one of the factors too. If we're in a drought, or if it's too rainy, or if flowers are coming up before the time and the bees haven't built up their stock, they don't get that food, because they dwindle down. They make themselves small in the wintertime, even here, so they have less to feed because there's not food out there for them. And so crops are coming up because of global warming earlier, which we've had all this wacky stuff happening. Or if things are flowering earlier, it doesn't mean the bees benefit, because they might not have built up their colony yet to go out and get it. So they've missed it. So it's very important. So it's little things like that that I'm still learning. I keep learning all these little facts. And I just found out last year about just because there's flowers doesn't mean there's nectar. Doesn't mean they have food. So 2 million flowers to go 50,000 miles. And one bee only makes a 12th of a teaspoon in her lifetime. One bee. That's it. A teaspoon of honey. So just those facts when you think about it. And the average bee, if they have to go really far for food, they're exhausting that energy. So most of them go 2 to 5 miles. And if there's no food with the monocrops, in the Midwest, if you've ever gone between the coast, you think it's boring to drive, crop. Think about the bee and how far it has to fly in order to get food. And so forget about the monocrop culture, because it's one crop. The bees need a variety of food just like we do for nutrition. They need a variety of food to have energy to live. And if there's one crop, most of the time, the one crop is a huge problem, because A, that one crop might not be the food that they need, or it has one food and that's it. And it doesn't supply them, so they can die just because of the lack of variety. There's no flowers, and what also happens is the pests that come as a result of having one crop. Because when you have many crops, you have the balance, because you have this one that eats this pest. But when you have one crop, one pest, it might not bring the counterbalance to that. The same things that happen with coyotes and small animals. We start thinking we're going to cut down the coyotes, and if you've ever seen that video on Facebook about how the rivers can be brought back because of the coyotes, or the wolves, that is, it's an interesting, I won't get into that because I can go off, but how that actually has changed. They show the evolution by trying to suppress the wolves, how the riverbeds actually, it's changed the system, because we're always messing with it, with what we think is balance, and then nature always balance. Then the population goes up because they're going to move over here, and then there's no predators. And it's the same with the bees. So, and because of the monocrop culture, and because of the pest problem, then they're going to use more herbicides and pesticides, which then has the other factor of killing them. And then it gets into the groundwater, and when the bees drink it, they bring it back to the hive, and that's how they make the honey. That's how they make the wax. And now it's in the hive, and one bee is not, they're considered an entity. The word 815 is escaping me, but the bees are not considered individual, they're all one. So whatever they bring back to the hive is their home, and it will kill the hive. And, so it's a problem. So it's just that one thing has so many facets of why it causes a problem. And there's many more than that too. So, also, part of the farming, which I understand these problems, and they're easy to point. It's always easy to point fingers, isn't it? Or to blame, but it's like, okay, how do we not blame and make changes? The farmers can't make money. Small farmers, it's hard to be a small farmer. So farmers are growing corn and soybeans because that's where the money is. And they no longer grow the alfalfa or the clover or any of the cover crops. And soy and corn are wind pollinated, and the other crops are bee pollinated. And that's how they can get their food. But now, because they're not growing these, the bees in the Midwest, it's devastating what's happening to them. And we're carting bees around, which I'll get into, then we need to start, because we have this problem, then we need to start with the commercial beekeeping, which people are bringing the bees into, from Florida. Florida, they're bringing out to the almond crops. We used to import bees from other countries. We don't have enough bees in the country right now to pollinate the almond crops this next year. So, and we've outlawed bringing bees in, which makes sense, but, it's a problem. They make up, bees give us 1/3 of our food. 1/3 of our food. And so just the fact that we don't have enough bees to create that food, and then we get into thinking we need to genetically modify food in order to grow, is just, we keep falling down this rabbit hole of causing a problem and thinking these are the answers instead of getting back to the simple way of balancing the ecosystem and saying what is fair for all, what is beneficial for all, and not just short-term profit and with long-term devastating problems that you can't reverse, because if they're gone, they're gone. There's many species that are gone. I don't want to rant and rave, but I'm going to stop doing that. So here's the result of monoculture. I'll just list them. There's a heavy use of chemical fertilizers. There's a heavy use of chemical poisons, the herbicides and insecticides. There's an increased susceptibility of disease. There's a low tolerance to stresses of drought or temperature. And see, one of the things that we're doing as a result of all these things, the monoculture, and the reason I say it's not one thing, the reason that most experts say it's not one thing, and especially the commercial beekeeping, is that the bees are weak. And the way we're pushing them to produce, like the way we push cows to produce, is making them weaker. And commercial beekeepers are weeding out. You can weed out and breed certain qualities in a bee and select. And when you do it just for the honey producing, you weaken the bees. Because when they force feed them, they keep them alive by any means. They change their ability to actually fight. So what's actually out in the world affects my bees. My bees will mate with the other bees, and they interact, and that causes a problem for everybody. So even if some of us are trying to live naturally and balance it, what goes on is still going to affect. I have no control over that. Or if a bee comes into, my hives, we have no control over that. So it's like, where do we have a right to speak up about other people's practices affecting the way I'm trying to individually live, and trying to individually live. Reduce resistance to insects, crop failures resulting in famine, reduce soil fertility, increase soil erosion, genetically engineered plants, which is a permanent loss of genetic variety in the crop species, increased habitat for pest species, reduce habitat for beneficial species. The other, please.
Can you give us like a 101 on a local level, like me, what would I do
Yes.
to help local bees, and
Yes.
especially in the winter?
Thank you for saying that. Because actually when I sat down with this, I was like, if I go over all this, this is much more than 25 minutes. So thank you. Yes, you can plant, you can do what I did when I came in to my new place and plant. On this list is a bunch of the plants that are all beautiful that help their plants for bees. And plant them. And actually what's important is, depending on how much of a yard you have or how much of land you have, it is important like to have lavender in one section because they only take one type of plant at a time. Like I was misinformed. I just got like all different kinds, and it's still great. It's still fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But she's going to go over the plant and just collect from lavender and find that, and usually do one source at a time. So you can take this and plant the bees. That will help. You can and plant in the clumps. You can also not buy genetically modified food. You can not use pesticides and herbicides and fungicides. And fungicides, all those things affect the bee because what they feed the baby bees is something called bee bread, which is fermented. And if the fungicides are killed, they have no source for food to feed the baby bees and they'll starve. So fungicides affect the, it's not just that it's direct exposure, because what's happening is when they're testing this, they're saying the bee's fine, but it's long term and how the system is altered. So you can sneak up to your local hardware stores and ask them not to carry it, or ask them to carry more alternatives. Please.
Is there any migration pattern to bees naturally, and are they beginning to migrate away from the monoculture areas?
Well, they don't migrate per se. Their radius, if they can stay within 2 miles of their home, then that's where they go. They might go out to 5 miles because they don't have enough food within 2 miles. But they don't migrate. Honeybees have a home. They live in a colony. And so they will stay within that range. And if there's no food, and one of the things here is actually too many bees. A lot of times, if you have too many bees in one area, they're fighting over food, and they will. They'll go to other hives and steal if they're robber bees. So they'll definitely take care of themselves. Does that answer your question? Please.
So this is really a fundamental question, and I'm sure that most everyone here knows the answer to it. But why or in what way are honeybees responsible for 80% of all fruits, vegetables, and seed crops? I understand in general terms pollination, but maybe you can just give us a simplistic overview of why bees are important in that sense.
Yeah, well, there are plants that can pollinate themselves, that pollinate themselves, male and female, parts of the plant.
Yeah.
There are ones that blow by the women, like soybean and corn. But there are plants that can't do it unless the honeybee actually takes from one. It won't, they won't propagate. They won't, unless the bee actually carries that and helps that to happen, that mechanism to happen. It won't happen on its own. Nothing else can do it.
And is that, we're talking about 80% of fruits,
Fruits.
vegetables, and seed crops?
Yeah. Yeah. All these little facts, like that's why I said you can just sit with these little facts and just make a whole, open up your whole world to some other thing about like how do I make a difference for the bees, because it makes a difference for us, and where will we be? And where will we be if we have to be creating food? Who's going to be in control of that? There's a lot of places you can go with that, which I can talk off podium about that, but where will we be if someone's in control of the water, if someone's in control of the food, and what's the food like if man's making it? What is that? And that's a question we have to ask because it's happening right now. Because the genetically modified food is different. People can argue all they want, it's different. The bees, affecting the bees also, so.
So it sounds like at the most basic level, the most simple thing we could do as individuals would be to plant a variety of food producing things in our gardens and yards.
Yes.
buy more food.
And be a conscious shopper. Be a conscious shopper, and you guys are Rotary members, you know, educate your sons in a loving way. Talk to your neighbors about not spraying. And the whole fallacy about spraying is that the certain, you know, it actually is easier to have to let nature take its course. We actually produce more when we're doing it in a natural way. It's been proven that, you know, Paul Kaiser from Singing Frog Farms, you know, the way he does it and utilizes and balances it his farm, he has a beautiful thing going. It actually is the way to go to let nature have all the different aspects of nature in order to run.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a work prize this week, and if I can push through a number. Okay, so.
49.
49?
That's the winner. Come on, Jacob, be
Number, we'll read the last.
149.
I almost did 49, it's 50, the last 40.
Last four.
Okay. 1159.
Yes. Double.
Done.
Here we go.
Drawing some money here. All you have to do with that is pick the case and just put it in there. So, it's just not families that have money. So, $2. This is seven of spades, okay? Thanks for playing. You have something for you. Oh, wow. Love it. All right. We have a joke from Mr. Gus.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
Section is out. We got a pretty lame one here, so. There was that snail traveling down Main Street. While stopped at the intersection, two turtles ran over and kept on going. Police showed up after a few 9/11 calls and started to question the snail. The officer asked, "How did all this come about?" The snail replied, "Officer, I can't tell you a thing. It all happened so fast."
So I don't know, I don't want to joke, but he writes the same way he speaks. It's